Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your detailed forecast update on severe tropical cyclone Zelia, situated offshore from northwest Western Australia. It is approaching Category 5 severe tropical cyclone status, and it's at an intensity that nobody forecast would become, and I'm going to go through why it's at this intensity in this update and how to prepare. And I need to stress this at the start of the video: for those between Karratha across towards Eyewall, which does include Port Hedland, stay calm throughout the remainder of this video and just take all of the advice I'm about to give at face value. It's very important that happens. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing and also leave a like on the video while you're at it. All of the support lately has been much appreciated, and I apologise for the lack of information on this cyclone so far. So let's get stuck straight into the forecast here. You can see on the satellite imagery it's rotating around a very nice structure. I mean, the eye is really starting to pop out right now on the latest frames of the satellite imagery, and I'm going to show that to you right now. This is obviously approaching Category 5 severe tropical cyclone status. It's not quite there at this time. It does need a little bit more work with the eye, but it is very, very close to that, and it's about 36 to 48 hours away from landfall. We're expecting that landfall to happen sometime tomorrow night, so it's still got quite a lot of movement to do closer to the coastline until it gets up towards the landfall, and I do reckon Port Hedland is going to get absolutely walloped by this system here. So again, make sure you do pay close attention in this update. It's a significant tropical cyclone, and like I said, we are expecting this to get up towards Category 5 status. I wouldn't be surprised if this blew through Category 5 status, and we're talking about one of the strongest storms in recorded history to impact the WA coastline, because it doesn't look like there's going to be an awful lot stopping this system, at least over the next 24 hours. Now, there is a couple of factors in the forecast that I'm hoping will kind of save northwest Western Australia from the absolute worst case scenario here, which is a monster tropical cyclone impact, and I'll get to those in just a moment here. But let's take a look at where the storm is situated and contrast that with the forecast models here. And I would say that right now the Eastern Weather forecast is doing a pretty good job. Same deal with the GFS forecast model here, and I would like to use the GFS forecast model in terms of the timing here, because right now intensity doesn't really matter. It actually doesn't look like the GFS wants this storm to go onto the coastline, but for now there is still a lot of uncertainty with this system and its whereabouts and where it is going to go in for a tropical cyclone landfall here. There are forecast models suggesting that it completely meanders around and doesn't even make a landfall and heads out to sea, heads across towards Barrow Island. I don't think that's going to happen at this time here. I do reckon that the system sometime tomorrow night, Valentine's Day, unfortunately, is going to make that landfall sometime between Karratha and Port Hedland, and again, that is for the most part reciprocated between the forecast models. Both the Eastern Weather and the Axis calling for a landfall at this time. The Bureau of Meteorology is calling for a landfall about halfway between Port Hedland and Karratha, and in fact I'm more inclined to follow the Bureau of Meteorology forecast at this time, just considering it does make the most sense. It's a pretty good mix of all of the major forecast models at this time, and I mean, there was no reasonable or rational forecast that could have forecast this intensity from this tropical cyclone. I would like to stress that enough, that this is by no means an error from the Bureau of Meteorology. We just did not see this coming. No reasonable forecast saw this coming, and I know there were forecast models a week ago saying that there was a monster cyclone headed into the WA coastline, but they were all calling for it over here around the Mandorah and the Wallal sort of area, or even in towards Broome. We weren't expecting any impact between Karratha and Port Hedland. But don't stress, if you live in Karratha and Port Hedland, I would like you to prepare and expect a Category 5 strength tropical cyclone to come through. A Category 5 does mean that there will be extensive damage, there will be destruction, there will be major damage to non-well-built homes, and that's just the fact of the matter right now. If a Category 5 makes a landfall and wallops either Port Hedland or Karratha directly on the head, it will be the worst tropical cyclone impact on the WA coastline in living memory up there. I don't think either town has had, at least not in the last couple of decades, a direct hit from a powerful, not just a baseline Category 5, but a powerful Category 5 strength tropical cyclone landfall. So definitely start sandbagging and prepare for flash flooding. Make sure you do have loose items tethered down and moved inside preferably as well, but if you've got trampolines in the backyard, if you've got time to deconstruct them, but make sure they're definitely tethered down. Outdoor furniture tethered down, that's for sure. Cars in and under carports, but at this time it does look like carports will be obliterated by a tropical cyclone of this magnitude here, so whatever's safest, even park them on the street. There's still going to be extensive damage and the risk of power lines coming down as well. If you can evacuate from Port Hedland, and if you've got family or a home out in Marble Bar or across towards Onslow or even Exmouth as well, if you can get down towards Onslow or Exmouth today, that's kind of the best solution at this time, and I do hope that this update does come out early enough. I'm really hoping that it does, in the sense that people do have that time and that solution to kind of evacuate down to those locations and have enough time for it. But right now I'm expecting this tropical cyclone to come ashore somewhere between Karratha and Port Hedland between about 2 p.m. tomorrow night and about 9 p.m. tomorrow night. That's a huge range of uncertainty for a tropical cyclone, and there's also a huge scope of possibilities, but that's just because this storm is slow moving at this time. You can see it on the satellite imagery. It's a really slow moving system. And it is also quite a small system, and it's very, very susceptible to its environment. And the environment that it was in was very, very favourable for this system here. And given that it is a small system and it's susceptible to its environment, it's able to rapidly intensify and develop really, really quickly. And that's why we're left right now with such a powerful, massive monster tropical cyclone. This is a dire look for Western Australia. It is a pretty similar situation to Tropical Cyclone Veronica, I have to say here, in terms of this storm's rapid intensification and its proximity to the coastline whilst it does it. Now, the storm will continue to intensify for the remainder of today. That's pretty much a guarantee at this time. There is nothing stopping this storm at all. But we're going to be looking at the radar imagery later on tonight for a phenomenon called an Eyewall replacement cycle. Now, that's a very nerdy term for tropical cyclone tracking and tropical cyclone chasers. But basically, what the gist of it is where the tropical cyclone replaces its Eyewall. Now, the Eyewall is where the most intense thunderstorms and the most intense storm conditions are in this tropical cyclone. So I'm expecting that to happen sometime tomorrow morning as it approaches landfall. Storms don't normally go about 24 hours without an Eyewall replacement cycle, and they can destroy a tropical cyclone. At least temporarily, it will weaken the system dramatically. On the other side, they can come out a lot stronger, and I do fear that that might be the situation with this storm here as it approaches the landfall. It will be intensifying once again, but if it happens sometime tomorrow morning into early tomorrow afternoon, we're looking at a weakening system as it approaches landfall here, and it will still take a couple more hours for the storm to recover. What I am saying here is, whilst a very powerful tropical cyclone is expected, I'm not expecting a linear rate of intensification over the next 36 hours and for us to have essentially a 200-kilometre wide tornado coming ashore. It will be a very powerful tropical cyclone, but the saving grace here is that this system is not likely to become much stronger than it is along the coastline. I most likely reckon that the landfall will be at Category 4 or high-end Category 4 or very early-end Category 5 status. It will still be a very powerful tropical cyclone with wind speeds up to about 230, 240 kilometres an hour, so we're still likely to see some of the strongest winds in Karratha and Port Hedland on record over there, but I don't reckon we're going to be seeing super high-end Category 5 strength winds like 270 or 280 kilometres an hour, which would cause total devastation across both communities there. I do reckon that there is still a chance of, some places being left untouched and some homes being left mostly damaged as opposed to completely destroyed. You can see winds in Port Hedland now starting to pick up here, 59 kilometres an hour. They're starting to gust up to about 80 to 90 kilometres an hour as well, and we're going to see winds strengthen throughout the course of today, but the strongest bands of the storm are still about 12 to 14 hours ashore from landfall, so you have right through today to intensify. Normally in a situation like this where we've got a tropical cyclone just offshore from the coastline, we're like panic stations. It's too late to prepare, it's too late to evacuate. In this situation here, we're lucky that the storm is slow moving and making the most of its environment right now, where we do have a little bit of an opportunity to prepare and, kind of get things sorted for Karratha and Port Hedland. But definitely for both Karratha and Port Hedland, depending on where this storm goes, I'll be giving frequent updates on the Facebook page as well, so make sure you are following there. It really is kind of a if or but in terms of how strong this tropical cyclone gets. But for Karratha and Port Hedland, I need you guys to prepare as if Category 4 or 5 strength tropical cyclone is coming ashore right now. If your home is not built for that, get into a home or a building that is built for that. I'm sure evacuation centres will be beginning to be opened up across Port Hedland. If you live in a flood-prone area because of this storm's slow-moving nature, and I said this a couple of days ago that this was going to be a rain-making tropical cyclone as well, if you live in a really flood-prone area, especially further inland as well, Marble Bar, Tom Price, Nullagine, Panawanika, if you live in those areas out there and you live in a flood-prone area or right on a river that's prone to flooding, then make sure you are preparing for some significant flooding as well. This is a very, very powerful tropical cyclone. I did not expect to be waking up to this on holiday, and that's why I've hit panic stations and carved out a morning to, really dive into the information on this system here, because this is going to be the strongest landfalling tropical cyclone on Western Australia, at least since Veronica, and I think we're going to be comparing this system here to probably storms like Damien, Veronica, even Ilsa to a degree. This is a very, very powerful tropical cyclone. Now, another kind of small detail here is if it goes into Karratha or it goes into Port Hedland, the other town is going to miss out on this tropical cyclone. But I think in a situation like this, for Karratha and Port Hedland, towns between that and then between Port Hedland and Wallal, I think it's a very, very wise idea now to prepare as if, not an apocalypse, but a Category 5 strength tropical cyclone is going to come ashore. This is a dire situation here, and I can't stress that enough either. Make sure you are safe. Make sure you are at a place that is safe as well. Make sure if you are going to stay and you're going to stay in your home, you are in a well-built home, get into the shops as well and preparing a couple of days of food supplies. This isn't far north Queensland either. You don't need 2 weeks of food supplies here. Access will be restored pretty quickly, I do have a feeling. I reckon, in fact, about 36 hours after the landfall, it will be safe to go out and venture out and have a look at what the damage is from this tropical cyclone here. So making sure you've got probably 72 hours of canned food and water. Panic buying just hurts other people and it makes the situation a whole lot more dangerous at everyone else's expense but your own. So again, make sure you are ready for this tropical cyclone, but not going absolutely overboard. This is a very bad situation as well. In all tropical cyclones as well, the safest is an interior bathroom. That's the safest room you can be in. So again, make sure you are ready and prepared to be in the interior bathroom or the laundry as this tropical cyclone comes ashore. This is a very, very dangerous situation, that's for sure. A lot of the new homes around Port Hedland and Karratha are built to withstand high-end tropical cyclones like this, so a Category 4 normally isn't a concern, but when we are talking about a Category 5 strength tropical cyclone landfall, I am expecting roof failures, even on the most well-built homes. A Category 5 is no joke. I mean, look back to Tropical Cyclone Yasi in 2011. That was a strong Category 5 as it made its landfall, and that caused all sorts of hell across North Queensland. This is going to be a very damaging storm as well, and a very costly storm for Western Australia. It's likely to shut down the mines across northwest and Western Australia as well. And if you are working FIFO as well, then please do let me know what the conditions are for your mine. Hit me up on Messenger or send me an email as well. I'll be more than happy to see videos or a report from your mine as well. I'm very, very keen to get as much information out from northwest Western Australia on this system, that's for sure. Now, if you're wondering why I haven't gone through too many frames on this video, and it's just basically been more or less a podcast actually, and I do apologise for that. It's probably not the most entertaining upload here on the CyclonesOZ channel. It's because I'm in a place with very poor reception. I do apologise for that. And I also apologise for the lack of information on the CyclonesOZ network in regards to this tropical cyclone here. I have been saying that this wasn't expected to become a tropical cyclone, and if it was going to go into an area between Port Hedland and Broome, most likely around Mandorah or Wallal. And at this time, it was really looking like that was going to be the case here, but this system has done a wobble, and it wasn't really expected to do this wobble here, but it's wobbled well out to sea here around Karratha and Port Hedland, and it's got an extra 48 hours to play with in terms of it staying offshore here. Very strong tropical cyclone, that's for sure, and we can't underestimate the waters around Western Australia. I mean, if we were to take a look at the sea temperatures here, 31, pushing 32 degrees along the coastline here, in fact in pockets pushing 33 degrees Celsius, where the storm is right now, 31 pushing 32, so very, very warm indeed. These sea temperatures here are no joke, and there's plenty of fuel for this tropical cyclone to continue intensifying. Another thing is the storm surge in regard to this tropical cyclone here. If you live in a very flood-prone area around Port Hedland, and I know Port Hedland is built on a peninsula as well, I do believe that they are elevated enough as to where that's not so much of a concern, but I do still expect a storm surge of around 8 to 10 feet around Port Hedland and also along Furness Island and into the ports around those areas there. I'm expecting a storm surge of around 8 to 10 feet, and then into some of the rivers around Port Hedland, a storm surge up to about 12 feet here. I believe this is the De Grey River here. That's going to get backed up pretty significantly by the storm surges. For Karratha, I'm expecting a storm surge of around 5 feet, depending on the landfall there. If they do cop a direct hit, then we're probably going to be looking at a storm surge of around 10 feet around the Karratha area, and expect waves offshore to be around 45 feet as well. So we could be seeing some monster waves and some really big coastal inundation there. And in short, if you don't live around 8 to 10 meters above sea level, you are at a very high risk of being flooded out by the tropical cyclone storm surge from this tropical cyclone. But yeah, that is all that I have time for this morning on Tropical Cyclone Zelia. It's a very, very powerful system, and it is likely to be upgraded to Category 5 status officially very shortly if it hasn't been already. I do hope you've enjoyed the video or found it informative, and if you have, then please do consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel as well. And again, I apologise for the lack of information on this system here. I really do feel quite bad. When I woke up and looked at this system on satellite, I felt chills, that's for sure. Anyways, that is all that I have time for this morning. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now, and again, I could not run the show without them, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.